And defining the undefinable. What I mean by that is if you ask 10 people what a brand is or what branding is, guaranteed they will not come up with the same answer. Essentially, you ask 10 different people who are experts in the industry and you're still not going to get the same answer. Branding is something that is not easily definable, and in that I'm looking to define and give you an idea of what it's supposed to do, how it functions, etc. We're going to be discussing what is a brand, what does it do, and then what do I do, what do you do, and what can you start doing right now. So first of all, what is a brand? A brand is perception. How a brand is perceived affects its success regardless of whether it's a startup, nonprofit, or a product. And so no matter what company you're working for, no matter what you are doing, brand is about perception and how something is perceived. What is brand identity? Because a brand is not a logo. That's something that is probably the most common thing that people would think of. But brand identity, it appeals to the senses, it fuels recognition, it amplifies differentiation, and makes big ideas and meaning accessible. And so to show the difference between the two of them, because the first thing we need to do is we need to understand how are these two different. I'm going to be using Starbucks as an example to be consistent throughout the evening. It's something that we can all relate to, and that's one of the main reasons I'll do it. Essentially, we have on the left a brand. It's not tangible. It's not something that you can see. A brand identity, of course you can. It's something we have full control over. It's something that we define. There's a lot of intention, but essentially brand identity is what is tangible, and a brand is not. Seth Godin, who I admire very much, said this: the design of Starbucks may have contributed to the experience, and the design may have helped them establish a feeling in a certain zone in the brain, but design and brand are two different things. And so what that is, there's a lot we can do with your identity. There's a lot that your logo has to do with things. There's a lot the touch points have to do, but ultimately those are not your brand. They're very different, as much as the identity will influence it. So when we look at a brand, I'm going to break it down to three very important aspects. So we start with brand vision, then we have brand perception, and brand experience, and then we'll get into touch points and how they all work together. So brand vision. It's the ability to think about or plan the future with imagination or wisdom. So your vision is the foundation of your positioning. Positioning is everything when it comes to brand. Positioning is the beginning of defining perception. And so when you establish a vision, when you put together your position in the market, that's what you are capable and able to control in terms of how it's going to be perceived. If you want to build something important, you need to build something different. You can't be the same as your competitors. Pepsi would not have Pepsi fans if Pepsi tried to be Coke, because they're just going to be second best and competing for the same marketplace, space. What we like to explain this to people is it's a lot better to be a big fish in a small pond than a small fish in a big pond. Because if you're going to build something identical to someone else, you're going to compete over the same customer base, and ultimately the only thing that's going to differentiate you is price. And as Bruce and Joanne talked earlier in the business side of things, that's just going to drive you straight to the bottom. So it's very important to be different. And great positioning comes from the differentiated advantage. So not just different, but what is different that can give you an advantage. Brand perception. It's the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. So you can influence perception, but you can't control it. And so this ultimately is what I explained earlier as the definition for brand. You cannot fully control your brand. Your brand does not exist based on what you define it, although you can heavily influence it. Ultimately, that being your customers, but also those who aren't your customers, define brand perception and define your brand. And so that's every single person, how they perceive you, your